What's up, Mike?
Hey, how you doing?
What's going on, man?
Oh, not much. How you doing?
Doing good, brother. Doing good. Finally get a chance to have a discussion with you.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true.
I still remember uh, hearing about a winery down around, a vineyard down around Tecumseh. What was that? Like maybe 9 or so years ago?
Yeah, boy, it's been longer than that. 2005 is when we started the vineyard.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That was roughly 3 years after I started doing winery tours in that area.
Okay.
Because I was in Tecumseh a lot at Dan Measel's place at
Y-
Pentamere.
Yep, Pinamere. Yep.
Yeah. So I think he was the one that kind of told me, "Oh yeah, we finally got a vineyard that's close." I said, "Oh, okay."
Yep.
So when I showed up to the industry tasting at the Rattlesnake and saw your table, I was like, "Oh wow, man, finally making some wine." So ever since then, I've wanted to come out. Always ran into some issues. I'm still planning on coming. But when I come, I want to bring some people.
Yeah, hopefully if this virus thing will ever straighten itself out, maybe we can do something. This is just an incredible year,
Yeah, because
needless to say.
I still want to do the Idlewild concept with you because
Yeah,
that is an awesome concept.
yeah. I've had a family in the past that had property up there, and we used to go up there every year because I was a hunter too, and we used to go up and deer hunt out of there for years. And we stopped that. Gosh, it's been a while. It's been a while now, but I actually come across some old pictures of that not too long ago, and gave give you memories of that. My dad, my uncles, and some folks that used to go up there all the time.
Yeah. Now, I just wanted to talk to you about. So you said the vineyard started in 2005.
Yeah, 2005, we planted our first 5 acres.
And what was the first 5 acres actually planted
We planted a lot of different things. When I went to Michigan State for 2 years and went at the time they used to have a viticulture and entomology program, and I did that, went through both programs, and I came out planning. And the professor that was in charge, Stan Howe, he's dead now. He told me I was going to have my own little research center going because nobody else down there had a vineyard. And so we didn't know what would grow and what wouldn't grow. So I tried a lot of different varieties trying to see what I thought would work. And so right away within the first year, I had some epic failures on a couple things like Merlot and Syrah, which definitely couldn't take the cold over the winter. And so we had Treminette was one of the ones, Chamberson, Foch. We planted Marquette and Frontenac. Those, and we also planted some Catawba and some Pinot. And believe it or not, the Pinot lasted for about 7 years. And then we got a really cold winter, and that took that out.
Okay.
So it's just, I don't know. Since then, we've added some other things. It's still kind of a work in progress, trying to see what will work and what won't work. And the weather's changing so much; it's still hard to figure out.
Right. So what are the vines that grow the best where you are what right now?
Right now, what I'd say it's probably the hybrids. We grow a lot of Frontenac. I added Frontenac Gris to that. My Catawba still grows fairly well. My Marshall Foch is really good. We also grow Vignoble. Vignoble is doing okay. Some of the other varieties, they're just not not doing well. We had a couple, 2 or 3 winters ago, we got really cold, like 28 below zero.
Yes.
And it really hurt things. And those vines just never really have recovered
Right.
from that cold. And like this last winter, it wasn't cold, but a lot of them, they just gave up. And I think it's just because they were damaged really from that year. And so I've been trying to figure out, what am I going to do as far as, what do I want to put in? Because it's easier just to plant something that's bulletproof and looks good than I can buy grapes, from somebody else and let them deal with that struggle.
Right. So you started planting vines in 2005, and you started actually making wine what year?
Oh gosh, for me or just in general, because when we first started, we planted vines kind of with the idea that we were going to try to sell them to other wineries and the home winemakers. And 5 years later, that's what we started doing. Was selling to other wineries like Dan and to home winemakers. Then I bought a small press because what I wanted to do was offer the home winemaker, instead of them coming and buying the grapes, they could come with the pails and they'd be able to leave with juice. And so I was pressing juice for them right there on the spot and sending them that way. But the whole idea was I was waiting until I would be able to open my own doors, and that didn't happen until 2016. And then we start making, wine commercially for ourselves.
Right. And you're also doing beer as well?
Yeah, I wasn't going to do beer at all. I have a friend up in Grand Rapids, and he told me when I was getting my license for the wine, he says, man, get your beer license. And I said, what for? I'm not doing beer. He says, you're not listening to me. Get the license. And I said, why? I'm not going to do beer. He says, just listen, get the beer license. He says, in about 6-7 months, you'll figure this out. He says, but if you're going to go through the trouble of getting a wine license, get the beer license. And I said, okay. But I had no idea of ever making beer. But about 6 months into it, I realized that I started seeing a lot of women coming in with their husbands, and they were beer drinkers, and they wanted no parts of any wine. And I said, oh man, we're going to have to start doing beer. So I started looking for somebody to do it. And I put it out as a contest to my customers. I says, hey, I'm looking for somebody that's like a home brewer that wants to step up and go to the commercial scale. And I said, so I had a lot of people that came out of the woodworks because everybody knows somebody that can brew beer. And I had them make 3 different beers. And I told them, I'm a lightweight beer drinker, but all my friends are the heavyweights. And they are going to taste the beer. And whoever they tell me makes the best beer, I'm going to offer the job to. And that's what I did. And so I hired this guy, and he lasted maybe 7-8 months. And he was a phenomenal beer maker, but he was a terrible businessman. And he didn't have concern for what it takes to be in business. And so I think before it completely fell apart, he decided to go away. So then all of a sudden, but at that point, I had people that were really starting to like the beer. So I started looking for somebody else, and I just started running into too many people that really wanted to have their own brewery. And it's like, well, go open your brewery, but you're not opening it here. This is mine, And so I just decided, well, guess what? I'll start brewing the beer. And so I jumped in, and I don't know why. I was laughing the other day. It's like, I feel I'm a hack at making beer, but people really like it. So I can't say anything.
Well, once you build it and once you watch somebody for a minute, you kind of get a feel for it. But always remember, it's always about the skill of the person or the imagination of the person making. So,
yeah.
Once you can get the skills down, it's all about what your imagination brings to. So that's probably why people are loving your beer.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
So we started doing beer and cider about the same time. And I hired this guy to do the beer, and I just added the cider to what I was doing. It's not that far off from the wine, And so, but then now I start doing all 3. And I think I've been doing that for about 2 years by myself now, doing all 3.
Wow. So what is your top seller right now out of the three categories that you have: your wine, your cider, and your beer?
I think since COVID started, it seems like it's the ciders. I mean, we sell it by howler and growler, and people have been just coming in getting refills. And I don't know if I know it's a bigger size. They want to take that, but I don't know. But that's definitely been the big sellers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are your ciders? What are your cider flavors? What are you producing as far as ciders?
We do a watermelon. We have a strawberry. We have a raspberry, a peach, blackberry,
Wow.
cherry, cranberry right now, and blueberry.
Wow.
Yep. I keep 8 ciders on tap all the time, and I keep 8 beers on tap all the time.
And how many wines do you have?
Probably 13, 14. I've got some that are sitting that are ready to come out. I'm waiting for labels and that label approval.
Okay. So what is your best seller as far as your wines are concerned?
God, that's a hard one to say. It's kind of across, believe it or not, we sell a lot of sangria, which is made out of our Frontenac Gris. I used to make my sangria out of Frontenac as a red sangria. And then I decided, let's flip it around and make it a white sangria, which it's really not white, it's more amber. And we used the Frontenac Gris, and people lost their minds over that. They just think that's the greatest thing on the planet. And I make it fresh every week, and people just come in, and that's huge. That's really been a huge one for us. Okay. And I never would have thought that either. I'm always baffled. I'm always scratching my head at what I think people would like. You know, but people like what they like, and that's all that counts.
No, I consider myself a pretty decent sangria blender. So, and I've always been surprised that no matter what I do, the sangria always sells.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yes.
We have another wine too. We have a peach wine that we sell a lot of. And that one's also one that's always, like I said, I'm always scratching my head. And the same thing with our cider. One of our most popular ciders has to be the watermelon. And it tastes, to me, I tasted it. When I got done with it, I says, oh my God, this is awful. I said, this tastes just like a freaking Jolly Rancher. I don't like Jolly Rancher watermelon. The rest of the world does. And it was like, I felt like I stumbled across what they did to make the watermelon Jolly Ranchers. And I'm telling you, people just buy it like crazy. They're like, oh my God, this tastes just like a Jolly Rancher. And I'm thinking exactly why I don't like it, but everyone else seems to like it.
You know, I've always told people in the winemaking game, winemakers start out with this in mind. Something else comes out. And what ends up happening is the winemaker may not like it or may have thought it was an absolute utter failure. But then you pour it for other people and other people go crazy.
Yeah. So I just shake my head and keep making it.
Well, I've learned a long time ago, it's what sells.
Right.
Because what was it? There was, when I first started working with Detroit Vineyards, the original winemaker was like, I don't do anything sweet. I'm not making anything sweet. When he first started doing tastings before they opened, people started, well, where's the sweet stuff? So he eventually had to, once he opened, he had to craft some sweet stuff. But I always, it's about the business end. You know, I understand what your philosophy is, but if 60% of the people are coming into your place like sweeter stuff, you got to start to craft your stuff towards them.
You're right.
If you want to stay in business.
That's right. I heard he left the country.
According to rumor, and I always consider Blake one of my best friends.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not kidding. He just disappeared. But
Really?
I've heard he's like in the Netherlands or something.
Yeah, that's what I had heard too. I
Yeah,
remember from when he was working out at Cherry Creek.
yeah, because that's where I met him. Because um, one of the people I used to do a lot of business with was John Burtka at Cherry Creek. So when John was phasing out the winemaking and brought Blake in, he introduced me to Blake. And then when the first concept of Detroit Vineyards came down, it was basically me, Blake, and John. So
Okay.
and John, after a while, he got focused on doing his stuff in Jackson. So and Blake really wanted to be in Detroit. So that ends up how that is. And when they first opened, I was with them for about 5 months. But after Blake left, it wasn't the same, so I had to book.
Why did he leave?
That is the big mystery. And the only thing I can say is that the money person lives in Ann Arbor.
Yep,
And
I know.
I think there became a point when they had a staff of winemakers. They had, including Blake, there were 3 winemakers.
Wow.
I still think the money person basically said, "What do I need you for if I'm paying these other 2 guys salaries?" And I think he ended up buying them out. That's what I think, but that was just a guess because it was just. I remember the staff meeting. It was Blake is gone. We don't talk about him no more.
Wow. Wow. That's too bad.
Yep, because there was just some stuff he knew how to make really, really well. But it's one of those things. Who they have now, he's actually doing more with. He's doing more with hybrids because Blake was more interested in the Vitis vinifera stuff.
Yeah.
And Chris,
Well,
I think Chris is more involved in the hybrids.
how's their stuff? I haven't heard really good reports from people that I talked to. I personally have had nothing, but my friends have not been very happy with what they've had.
Well, I believe their Cab Franc was really good. Blake's initial Pinot Noir was pretty good. The Cabernet Sauvignon was subpar because it had no real flavor. It was really, really light. There were people that came in that basically said it had somehow over oxidized. What else? They eventually came in and made a pretty decent Merlot rosé, and their Cab Franc rosé was pretty good. And his he did a buckwheat honey mead that was barrel aged. That was, to me, it was a game changer because people who came in will always say, "I don't like meads because meads are too sweet." And this mead was bone dry, barrel aged, and it just had a whole different mouthfeel to it than most meads.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's good, but I guess it's not good that he's not here. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Lost you for a second. Yeah, that's I like Blake. And then all of a sudden I heard he was gone and I just didn't know the story behind it.
right. Well, to be perfectly honest, I worked there and the story was never fully revealed. It was just, he's no longer here. We're bringing in a new general manager. And when Chris got there, we just didn't mesh.
Yeah, I don't know him at all.
Yeah, we just didn't mesh. And the concepts he was bringing in, because he's gonna. I think they're pretty close to releasing their sparkling wine, and he did something. I can't remember if it was a Concord, but he did something that he did carbonic. And before I left, he was in the middle of the carbonic,
Okay.
which was crazy. I got to taste the base out of it, and it was crazy. Like I said, personally, we didn't mesh, but what I saw him doing, I thought would be a game changer, especially in the only winery in the city of Detroit. I was like, okay. And I still go in there every once in a while because some of my friends still work there. And so I go there to sip and make sure they get tips.
Yeah, sure.
But what else? Who actually got you involved in wine, or what was your epiphany when you discovered your passion for wine?
Man, it's a long time ago, and it's like nothing you would ever think. Because I grew up in Detroit. I lived up on Arlington, which north of McNichols, kind of between DeQuinder and Jos Campo. That was northeast side. And I went to Pershing High School. And when I was 16, I woke up one day and decided I wanted to make some wine. And it was that simple. I woke up and decided I wanted to make some wine. Now, the goofy part is my parents were way religious, Pentecostal, didn't drink, nothing like that. But we were lucky where we lived at on Arlington. My parents owned the lot next door. So
what's your wild grape wines over there?
So my dad had all kinds of stuff planted there because he was a big gardener. And we actually had 3 different types of wild grapes growing on the property. And I remember 2 of them, we only got grapes every other year. It was weird. And then one vine we got every year. And my mom used to make jelly and jams out of that stuff. So when I woke up, it was the perfect time. It was in the fall, the grapes were ripe, and I went out there and picked everything my mom would have used to make some jelly with, brought it in the house, used their biggest pots and a potato masher and mashed it up into this nasty slurry, ran it through some cheesecloth, and then put it in the pop bottles because that's all I had. And back then, because this was a long time ago, there was no internet. The only thing I knew about making wine was it needed to be in the dark. So I put it all in the dark in the back of a closet that I shared with my dad and stuck it back there with his suits and our suitcases. And every couple of days I'd go back there with a flashlight to look at it. And I thought initially that it was percolating because I didn't know about fermentation. And I'd go back and look at it and thought, wow, it's working, you know? And then typical kid, I forgot all about it. And so I remember I've got one brother, and he's 11 years older. And he came over maybe a year later, and he said, hey, whatever happened to that wine you were making? And I said, it's still up there. And he says, well, isn't it done? And I said, I don't know. So I said, I'll go get some. So I went and grabbed a few bottles, and we're sitting down at the kitchen table, and he opens one up and he's swirling it around, and he's, like I said, he's 11 years old, and he's smelling it. And so he finally tasted it. He says, yeah, it tastes like the real McCoy. Well, I don't know the difference. So I opened it up and started drinking this stuff like a bottle of pop. And I think I was on my 3rd bottle when my dad came in the house and says, hey, what are you guys doing? I'm sitting there going, hey, we're trying my wine. He says, your wine? So I told him how I had made it all. Everything was cool till I got to that part about, yeah, it's all in the closet by your suits. Then he lost his mind, It's like, oh my God, I can't believe this stuff didn't blow up. Get that stuff out of the closet.
Right.
So I go to stand up after having those bottles. That's when it got ugly. I started staggering around trying to get upstairs to do that, but it hooked me to making wine. And I had been fascinated with it ever since then. And I started making it on my own, just off and on, year after year. And then it's not until you get up to 2002 that I decided that I wanted to go from a home winemaker to commercial. And I said, I got to figure out where can I go to school to do that. And I was thinking, I was looking at New York State, I was looking at California, trying to figure out how I was going to do that. And then I find out Michigan State had a program. I was like, oh my God. I remember that was in April because I was talking to my tax guy. And then that August, I was signed up for the fall and was going to Michigan State, which I did for the next 2 years. And same thing, I came out of that, they kept asking me in the program because I was, needless to say, I was the only Black guy in there, and I was probably the oldest guy in there initially. And then they kept saying, what are you going to do? And I said, as soon as I'm done, I'm planting grapevines. And everybody kept looking at me like, yeah, sure you are. And same thing, I was working at the fire department, and these guys were saying, what are you doing this for? Because I had, I lived in Tecumseh then. So for me to drive there was an hour and a half, and I had everything worked out to where I was gone all day. But working at a fire department, I worked 24 hours. So I had to trade days. I was trading time. I did this stuff for 2 years trying to make this work. And I finally got it all done. And as soon as it was done, I hit the ground and I started ordering grapevines to plant the next year. I don't think anybody believed I was going to do it, including the guys I work with. But I just jumped in both feet and just never stopped.
Wow. Now it's real funny. You said you started around 16?
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't discover wine until I was 17. But
You
it
didn't
was
make
one
it in
of
the
those
closet, did you?
No, it was different. It was my parents, your parents were religious. My parents were spiritual, not really strict religious. And we were just in the grocery store one day, and I just told my mom, I said, can I get that bottle of wine? And she said, okay. So we brought it home, because you have to understand, previously, my parents let me experiment. I experimented with liquor. It was too strong. I experimented with beer. It sucked then.
Yeah.
But when I got this wine, for some reason, I was like, dang, this is good. And I always remember it was Taylor, California Cellars.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So it was basically their Riesling. And so I was like, well, dang, I can do this. So when I went away to college, while everybody else was doing keggers and everything else, I always had wine in my room. But then I discovered that I could be in a dorm with a bunch of different rooms. You'd have a keg down one in one room. You'd have a full bar in another room. And I had wine in my room. And I had all the girls in my room. And right, so they were like going, and even the guys started to realize, well, dang, the girls follow the wine. I said, I learned that. But that's always, and I gotta honestly say, I was drinking wine. I visited all of the Michigan wineries, Midwestern wineries in the 80s. And it took a trip to Napa in 2001 when I got the bug.
Yeah.
And I will always remember it was sitting at the fountain at Visa Tui in Napa. I just said, I got to find a way to do this.
Yeah.
And so I basically just ended up being a facilitator and a marketer. But like I said, I've been trying to get more involved in blending because for some reason, when I started pouring wine at events, I always poured different things for different people. I'd give them samples of everything to see what they liked.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd always get those people that I didn't have something right in their wheelhouse. It was always too dry or what I had was too sweet. So I found a way to blend the sweet and the drier ones together. And then say, try this. And then they would go, oh yeah, I can do this.
Yeah.
So I kind of realized I'm not necessarily a wine maker, but I know how to blend this stuff.
Yeah. We do a lot of that in our tasting room as well with our wine. Yeah. trying to find a sweet spot for people as to what they like.
Yeah. Because I keep telling folks, again, if you're getting into this as a business, that's what it is. It's a business. And eventually, if you're going to keep customers, you got to make them happy. So,
yeah, that's exactly the truth. It's not about what we want.
So any mentors or anybody that you looked up to, or it was just you?
I had a lot of people that helped me when I got started. When I first was serious about it, over on the west side of the state in the summer, they used to have winemaker meetings once a month, run by Tom Zabadal, who was in charge of Michigan State's research facility over there. They used to visit different wineries, different vineyards. Sometimes it was just at the research center. They were kind of loosely run, but what it did was it introduced me to every owner over there. You name it, I know them all, and on a first name basis. And I remember when I first got over there, you know, once again, like I'm used to always being the only black guy at everything. And I was the only one there. And I remember Jeff Lemon from Lemon Creek was the first person that ever talked to me. Everybody else was eyeballing me, but he was the only one that actually had something to say. And he asked me, he said, so, you know, what are you doing in this? And I was telling him I'm going to start a vineyard. And he was saying, oh, he says, well, first of all, he says, let me tell you, you're on the wrong side of the state to do that. You got to get some property over here. And I says, that's funny. That's the same thing that the guys up in Traverse City told me about you guys.
Yep.
And so we started laughing, and we've been pretty good friends ever since then. But over there, I'd have to say it would be Jeff Lemon, Wally Muir, were big proponents. Doug Welch from Finn Valley. Back before he got remarried, he was really a very approachable and touchable guy. Now it's just about impossible to get him. But one of my biggest helps was a guy named Bob Bung up in Grand Rapids at Cascade Winery. He really took me under his wing and helped me through most of everything getting going over there. Back here, I'd have to say it was definitely Dan Nitz. I mean, not Dan Nitz, Dan Measle from Pinamere, because he was right in the backyard, you know. Yeah. But you know, and then a lot of it was just me. You know, I was just dangerous enough to do it, and not fearful enough to do it. And, you know, and I remember I did some really boneheaded things at the beginning and had myself scared for no reason. And I called Dan, I think I just screwed it all up, you know. And he'd say, what'd you do? And so I'd tell him, he says, oh, dude, don't leave it alone. Wait a week, then go taste it. And I was like, okay. You know, just all kinds of things, because I wasn't used to using commercial scale equipment and doing things in that manner. And it was just a whole nother ball game. It would have helped if I had gone to work for somebody else for a year or two and maybe work with them. And then I probably would have been, you know, more confident with it, instead of just, hey, this is brand new. I'm the first one that had this press. I got this thing and I'm just going to run it, you know, and I just worked my way through it.
Yeah. Now I remember the story about Dan Measle when I used to do my winery tours over there. And I brought one tour in, he was discussing his Mystic Apple wine. And I remember he had basically just started fermenting it. And then he says, Chuck, the next time you come here, we should be tasting Mystic Apple. 6 months later, I bring in another crew. First thing out of my mouth, Mystic Apple ready yet, Dan? Nope. He was like, I don't know what it is about the apples. It's still not there yet. I said, okay. So I came back, I think it was like 3 or 4 months after that. And he says, we just bottled it, but it's going to be at least 2 weeks before we can do anything with it. I said, okay. So it was like, took a good year, I think, almost a good year and a half, but it's that you kind of think you know, but that's one thing I learned about the wine business and talking and sitting with you winemakers is that you may think you know how long this is gonna take, but it may need an extra 3 months of barrel aging because it's just not there.
Yep. And what I've learned is to keep my mouth shut. It's done when it's done.
Yeah.
No promises, because you just never know.
Yep.
That is quite true.
Yeah. Have you connected with anybody in Traverse City?
Only person that I don't really talk to a lot of folks up there anymore. I used to know everybody up there once upon a time, but that's been years and years ago. And there's not that many people that I deal with up there anymore. Only person is Larry Mulvey.
Yeah.
And really that's about it. I know I went to school with a couple guys up there, the winemakers for Chateau Chantel, and also God, where's Brian working at now? Chateau Grand Traverse, and let's see, Black Star Farms, and Charlie Edson from
Bellago.
Bellago, yeah, because he's a Michigan State guy,
Yeah, well, I just talked to Charlie 2 weeks ago. They just bought. Well, basically, he sold Bellago.
He did.
Basically now he's just there, I think, as more of a consultant and a winemaker.
Really?
But whoever bought Bellago turned around and bought. I didn't know this property existed, but it's called French Valley.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Yeah. So he, when I was talking to him on Zoom 2 weeks ago, he was talking about just tasting 30 different wines that French Valley was producing.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with them at all.
Right. And I wasn't familiar when he told me. I Googled it. And what I'll do is I'll send you the link that I have.
Yeah.
But they're just getting really started.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, they must have deep pockets if they're buying those places.
That's really what's going on in at least the Traverse City area. There's a lot of speculation going on up there now. And Charlie's really been trying to get, because he said he wants to retire anyway, but he's wanted to retire for like the last 10 years.
At least.
So
at least.
every time I talked to him, he was like, man, I'm trying to get out of this. But there's not a bigger wine geek on this planet, I don't believe, than Charlie.
Yep. He makes some very good wine.
Yeah. Trying to figure Oh, I have to ask you a question because it was actually brought up in the first Zoom video that I did with Lou Garcia from Stover Oaks.
Okay.
Lou Garcia is one of the original charter members of the Association of African American Vintners.
Okay.
Him, Mac McDonald.
Yep.
I think at the time it was Vance Sharp. But right now, I think Phil Long at Longevity is like I think he's the president now. But Lou is like their membership person. So he told me to reach out to you to see whether or not you would be interested in becoming a member of the Association of African American Vintners.
I would probably do that just because. I don't see any benefit in it because it seems like everything that they're in California and everything is based kind of in California.
Well, no, they do, just so you know, they do tastings all over because there are ancillary groups like Black Vines, Hue Society that are like in DC, New York, and a couple of other spots.
Really?
Yeah. And who is it? The young lady, Jennifer McDonald, who's in Wichita, Kansas.
Hmm.
She's a member. She's one
Okay.
of the newest members. And because of that, they get you into all those. Whenever they're doing stuff that's outside of California,
Yeah.
they hook all the members up to that so they can get their wines exposed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you do any direct sales outside the state of Michigan, or is it all in state?
Well, up until COVID, we had been doing everything in Michigan, but COVID has kind of made me rethink that whole thing, and we just recently changed our licensing so that we can start doing direct sales inside the state as well as, you know, we're going to be able to do everything outside too. And we're just actually finalizing some packaging and things like that so that we can start doing it, because we'll be able to ship to 32 different states when it's all said and done.
Okay. Well, I'll send you that information as well, because I've been working with the association since I started doing organized wine tastings in 2003, 2004. And I've met most of these guys, and actually Lou sources his grapes from Lodi, California, but he lives in Shaker Heights, Ohio.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just cool, because you realize that, you know, you can work remotely and still do what you need to do.
Oh, absolutely.
And the thing about Lou actually started in wine finance, because I believe he's a CPA by trade.
Okay.
And he basically became the CFO at a number of larger wineries, caught the winemaking bug, and then started his own winery.
Okay. I understand that.
Yeah.
It's easy to do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No, we kind of do the same thing. We get our Cab and we get our Syrah from Chile. I just like the flavor of the grapes from there much more so than other places. So I know what you're saying about, you know, you can be anywhere, and it's just amazing how small the world really is when it comes to getting that kind of stuff.
Yes, sir. Because who was it? I think it was Chateau Chantel. When was that? About 2008 or so, 2006 to 2008. They actually bought an Argentinian vineyard.
Oh, did they really?
And I still think that they have it, because I think they're still bottling their Argentinian mailback and selling it.
Gotcha. Huh.
Because the original goal was actually to use it as a blender to kick up the Michigan Reds, the Michigan Vitis Vinifera.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I could see doing that. That's for sure.
Yeah. Lord, I'm trying to figure out if there's any. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Boy, that's a good question. I wish I could answer that one right now. I don't know. This is a very, very strange year by no stretch of the imagination, as you know. I mean, I'm just trying to see just which way the world is going. And so I'm just trying to get through this year and see what it looks like and how we have to adapt to deal with all this. Because it's a different environment. I surely see that. I think that, at least for now, being able to sell wine remotely is going to be the key to doing everything. And so we're actually repackaging. I'm not going to, you know, like I was doing all my ciders. We're going to export all that out. My friend that I was telling you about in Grand Rapids, he's got a canning facility. And so we're going to have all of our ciders canned. So we're going to move all that up there to him and let him make everything. So that way we can get canned stuff, which is just going to make it easier for me to sell it, not just out the door here, but also in stores and wherever else I'm trying to get it, as well as getting it out of the state.
Well, now because you're telling me your watermelon tastes like a doggone watermelon Jolly Rancher.
Yep.
If you get that on the shelves at Meijer, you're a millionaire.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, too, the one thing that's really cool about the ciders, and like you were saying, is that mixing this stuff together. I mean, we mix things together with the ciders and people love it. And what's really weird is when you start mixing a cider and a beer together, and people really like those too. And then, and even some of the wines and the ciders together. That's not the thing that is great about the tasting room. It's hard to do that any other place, but you can surely do that when you're in the tasting room. And, but I don't know. I just think that we're in a whole nother environment now, and we're going to have to do things a little bit differently, because I see that people are still really scared to come out in groups, as well as in some instances. I mean, Traverse City, I heard the other weekend, my buddy called me from up there. I got a buddy. I don't know if you're familiar with, what is it? 1914, Vineyard. 1914 is fairly new. They've only been open maybe a year.
Okay.
And they were telling me that last weekend was freaking incredibly insane on how many people inundated there by the thousands. And he was saying that he's waiting now for the state to get shut down up there, because he says it was just that bad, and there's just so much video of how bad it was that he can't imagine that they're going to get away with that. And I don't know. I think it's different from place to place, but I know where I'm at. I know people seem to be much more leery about coming out as they did, and everyone that does come out is running for outside. They don't want to be in the building. They want to be out. And so that's making us change the way we do things. We have a big deck, but we also have picnic tables. But I also know from years in the past, people don't like to sit out in the sun. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to cope with keeping them covered, having enough room out there to do that. And so, I don't know. I feel like I'm dealing more with that right now to even look any farther down the road. I feel like, are we going to come back to what used to be normal, or are we headed in a whole nother direction? And so I think I'm leaving everything open until I can kind of have a better idea of where that's going.
Right. Now, you said you have the ability to ship to 32 states?
Yes.
And they can do all of that through your website?
They will be. We're changing the website. And unfortunately, the guy I had developing my website, I just fired here a few weeks ago. So we're still working on a different one now. So it's going to take us a little bit to do that. He had the wrong person doing the job, so he had to go. Now we got to get somebody else.
Okay. Well, I just want you to keep me in the loop, definitely, because I will help you get it out there so that we can get your wine in as many states as possible.
Okay.
Okay? Because
Sounds
that's
great.
what I do. My passion is just in making sure that people know who you are, people know what you make, and people can get what you make.
Great.
And I also know that I can talk to Regina at House of Pure Vin, because she's in the same boat you are. She doesn't know exactly what's next, because she was converting from 100% retail operation into a wine bar.
Okay.
And now with all of this stuff, that's kind of put a damper on her conversion.
Sure.
But she's gone primarily to just a retail concept where anywhere in the country you go on the website, you order it, we'll ship it to you.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll make sure I connect you two, so that there might be some way that we can add some of your wines to the wine club for exposure. And then from that, because generally a lot of her wine club wines end up on her normal menu just for people to order.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I don't want to hold you. I just wanted to finally truly get to know who you are.
Well, I'm glad you did.
and your origin story. Because eventually I may end up in the wine, having my own winery or affiliating with a winery, but whether I do or whether I don't, I just really appreciate all of those people, all of those winemakers that took that leap to go out and create what was in their heart. Because I don't care what anybody says, I will always stick with boutique wineries because I know that there's a lot of love that goes into what you guys make.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, while I got you, I wanted to ask you a question. I remember a few years ago, a couple years ago maybe, there was 2 or 3 guys in Detroit that were talking about trying to open a winery. And I thought it was going to be up in the 8 Mile Road area, that they were trying to actually buy some property. And they had some pretty big ideas that I had read about, but then I never heard anything. You happen to know who that might be?
No, I don't. Because I think at the time, I really want to say, because kind of everything, I take that back. Because but I don't think that was rolling. Because a buddy that I went to high school with has been growing grapes here in the Detroit area and making wine for doggone near 12, 13 years. And he always wanted to open up a winery, but he still hasn't put his foot out there yet. But he's actually converted some vacant plots in the city of Detroit and he's growing grapes. Similar to what Blake was doing.
Okay.
Uh,
If I can find that article again, if I come across it, I'll forward it to you. Because I remember it had their names and what their plans were and that, and it was supposed to happen that year, but then I never really saw where anything happened. And
Right.
And it all kind of went away. And then the next thing I heard of anybody doing anything in Detroit was Blake.
Yeah. Well, if this was back, when was that? Are you thinking about 2009, 2010?
I don't think it was that long ago, but you know what? Sometimes you know how time gets away from you. You think it was yesterday, and it's like, oh hell no, that was 10 years ago. So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'd have to find the article because I remember somebody had done an article. I think it was Black Magazine. I think that's who it was. And I remember they were talking about their favorite local black wineries. And I was thinking, you know, and I remember they talked to me and they told me when this article was out and I read it and I thought, what the hell are they talking about? One thing was there was a shop that sold a wine infused soap. And I was thinking, how the heck is that a winery? And it wasn't even in Michigan. It was like out of Illinois. And then they were talking about Mac out in California. And I was thinking, what the hell is local about California?
Right.
They had me in there. And then they had talked about these other guys, I think it was, that they were going to open this and it was going to be open before the end of the year. And I thought, wow, that's interesting to hear. But then I never heard anything. And I just remember it was like really a strange thing. I think that was the magazine, though. I have to go back and double check and find it.
I still got to double check because I think Black Magazine just got sold. And I think it's one of my frat brothers that bought it.
Okay.
So I've got to get more information on that. But all I do is I'm just a facilitator. I just connect people.
Well, cool. Well, all right. I will, if I find it, I'll send it to you.
Awesome. And what I'll do is I'll get you that other information and I'll get you that other information ASAP. And I'll keep you in the loop because what I'm hoping to do one week is to basically get 3 winemakers on here at one time.
Okay.
And then open it up so that people can ask questions and stuff like that. Because I think people, as I've always said about food and wine, you want to know you want to know who's making your wine. You want to know the farmer that's raising your cattle. You want to know, you want to know the farmer that's growing your corn. So
Yep.
that's the goal, is to have people get to know. And the one thing about what's going on now virtually is on Instagram and all these other platforms, you know, I can sit on Instagram in an afternoon and watch somebody from Louis Latour, somebody from Chateau Angelus, and find out what they're doing. So I just came back from Bordeaux and Champagne and Cognac in October.
Oh, cool.
So now virtually, I want to go back, but I don't have to go back as soon.
Yeah.
But man, I love Bordeaux. I keep telling people I can move there tomorrow.
Could you?
Yeah, it's not as fast paced as Paris, and the people are just cool. People are cool and down to earth.
That sounds
Right.
good.
Yeah, great talking with you.
All right, you take care.
All right, you too. Have a good night. Have a great weekend.
Yep, you will.
All right.
See ya.